Greetings, viewers, and welcome to our Sage 200 Inventory Counting webinar. Today's presentation will consist of the following: an introduction to the inventory count, the setup and access permissions, pre-count requirements, creating a count, input methods, serial number and lot number imports, a post-count review, and scheduling of accounts. Now, it's very important to understand that inventory forms a very important part of any business. It's therefore important that you need to ensure that you maintain strict control of your inventory, ensure that inventory counted on regular basis in order for you to ensure that the system values correspond with your actual physical inventory. And today we're going to see how easy it is to process an inventory count within Sage 200 Evolution. Right, let's get started. Now, it's important to understand that an inventory count is actual fact a transaction. So in the same way that you're processing something like an invoice, a GRV, credit note, etc., an inventory count is a form of a transaction. And based on that, it's linked to a transaction type. So we need to go check the following first, is that under inventory maintenance, we're going to go to defaults. And if we open up defaults, we've got an adjustments option. And within there, we've got a transaction code. So any instances where there are variances between system quantity and count quantity, there's going to be an adjustment processed and needs to use this particular transaction code. So if I simply go and edit this transaction code, it's an ADJ adjustment, and it's going to specify the debit and credit ledger accounts are going to be updated based on the transaction processed if there is an inventory variance that needs to be updated. Right. And in the same way that we've got a transaction, we also know that there are access permissions we can implement for agents. We'll be undertaking the inventory count, and we can either enable or remove those particular permissions. So I'm going to go to administration, agents, and find the agent or an agent, access permissions. And if I look at my inventory, I've got a section for inventory count permissions. So I can firstly allow an inventory count to occur by this agent. They can be allowed to complete the count, allowed to complete a spot count, allowed to display system quantities, allowed to edit report layouts, and allowed to print variance reports. So depending on the functions that are required, you can then either allow or disallow those access permissions for the agents who will be completing or undertaking inventory count. Right. So in order to start a count, we're going to go to inventory, and we're going to go to transactions, inventory count, and I'm going to go add account. And you'll see that accounts allocated number. So every account can have its own unique number, there's a description, and then I can specify a reference. Now, there are four statuses with regards to inventory count. Firstly, it's in progress, which means that the count has been opened and is still available. There's a process called completed, captured, and count due. And we'll deal with those four options during the webinar. So I'm just going to specify a reference here. And we can then say delete the count after completion, yes or no. And we can specify to include system quantity on hand. Now, this option is quite important, as it simply means is that on your stock count sheets, you're going to display the system quantity on hand. So the user, when the count is being done, they will know exactly what the system quantity is, and then they will need to specify the current quantity. So it's either a case of allowing or disallowing this particular option on your stock count sheets. We've also got a schedule count, which we'll come to later, and then very importantly, details about the options. So it's Specifically, if you are using job costing or manufacturing, it's very probable that you would have work in progress jobs or manufacturing processes where stock items have been issued and have been reserved for those processes but have not physically been consumed. So it's simply a case of determining, do you want to have the quantity on hand less work in progress for those options? If you are making use of reserved quantities, with regards to order entry, you can specify to include the quantity on hand less the reserved quantities. And then if you are doing deliveries, you can specify to the quantity on hand plus the quantity to deliver, or you can specify to include only bins with movement. So depending on what your scenario is, you need to obviously specify which options are applicable to your account. If you then go to the inventory tab, you'll see that we can have a lot of options there. These include inventory types. We can just do counts, for example, for lot numbered items, warehouse items, serial number items, or standard items. And we can specify those filter options there. And we can be quite flexible with regards to the type or the range of items we want to be counting. So we can specify from and to range. We can specify groups, packs, categories, etc., as well as lot statuses. If you only want to count certain lot statuses, you can specify those details there. Now, it's very probable that it may not be physically possible for you to count all your stock at once. So this is a great way where you can, for example, count maybe a certain portion of your stock at a certain time and then update that accordingly. So I think a good example would be maybe in a retail store, where you could perhaps at some point during working hours, you could still count the items that are in your store at some point, and then after closing hours or after business hours, you can then go and count to a separate count and count the items that are physically on your shelf. So quite a flexible option here with regards to specifying items that need to be counted. Under warehouses, it's simply a case of specifying the warehouse that you want to count the items for, and you can specify those details there. So I'm just going to count certain items here, and let's just go do a quick range. Let's just find a range of items we can count. These are just going to be sundry items. So, right, so we've done that. And right, so we've got a range of items there. We specified the types is all, warehouses, one particular warehouse, and we've got our details there, and we're good to go. Right, so I've got my details there, and what you'll notice is that if I go back into the count, I'm not able to make any changes to my range now simply because the count has now been created. Right, so if I look at this column, you'll see that it tells me how many items are in my count and how many items are uncounted. The status is set to in progress, and now I can continue. So the next step is going to be I need to go and print my stock count sheets, and I can do that by going to the option there that says Inventory Count Report. Open up that. I've then got my range of items that I've selected, and if I preview that, those are my items that form part of my count. I've got my system quantity there because I've specified that on the count, and then I would then distribute this to the individuals counting the stock. They would then physically go count, specify the actual quantity counted, and then specify a variance there if there is one which is applicable. Right, so I'd hand out those stock count sheets, and the physical count would then take place. Once those items have been counted, I would then receive those stock count sheets, and then you'd have perhaps a group of individuals who would then be logging to the count and then go and capture those quantities. Now, we can capture quantities in three different ways. First, we've got the input option, and this is simply a screen where I've got an individual item with the details, and they can either set, add, or subtract the quantities, and I can then say the quantity counted, apply that, and I can then move on to the next item. And add those quantities as required. So it's one screen, one item, insert the details there. We also have the ability to use the edit quantities feature. And if I use that option, a bit more flexible here, that I've got all the items appearing on one screen, and I'm simply going to go and specify the quantity counted, and it will then update the variance automatically. So I'm now going to say, for example, there was 116 there, and so as you can see on line number 1, the system quantity and count quantity are the same, therefore there's no variance, it's marked as counted. On the second line item, there was system quantity of 117, a count quantity of 116, which has resulted in a variance of 1 unit, also marked as counted. And on the last item, we've got a system quantity of 190, a count quantity of 192, which has resulted in a surplus of 2 units. In this particular instance, there was stock on the shelf that we weren't aware of, so therefore we've got more stock than what the system is telling us. Quite simple. I'm going to say save and close. And what you'll notice now is that the count quantity remains the same. However, the uncounted has now set to 0, simply because all those options have been counted within my count. Right, so let's just go through to the next option, and the ability to import. Now, are able to import count quantities from a TXT file, and it's just be a case of mapping that file to your actual settings. We'll be covering the importing of stock or lot numbered items and serialized items in the webinar, so we'll come to that later. And then we've got the option here to capture the stock count. Now that simply means is that we're going to go lock the count. So once the count has been completed, we don't want any more changes being made to the quantities. So therefore we can simply go use a captured option. So just go and I'm going to say captured. And it's simply going to go lock the count. No more changes can be made. So I'm going to say yes to that. And as you can see, the status is now set to captured. And what you notice is that input and import are disabled. If I go to edit quantities, it's still available. However, I cannot make any changes simply because that count has now been locked. Right, so once everything has been completed, I now need to go print a variance report. So that option is over there, and I can say inventory count variance report. And I can then print a report based on certain criteria. And if I preview that, it's going to give me details of the items that form part of the count, the system quantity, the count quantity, the variances, the cost variance, and the total. So it's very important that you print this count variance report prior or before completing the count, as you've got those details and you can see exactly which items are going to be adjusted based on the variances and the costs implicated on those variances. Right, so do that very importantly before you complete the count. Then finally, I'm going to go to complete. And once again, I've got the option to print that variance report from this screen. And I can then update the inventory count on a certain date, either post to on a specific date, on the preparation date, or the current date. Right, so I'm good to go. I'm saying okay, and complete the count. Right, no errors. I can then go view the log file, and you'll see that I've got an option there where under your inventory count complete, and it's going to give me details of exactly the items counted, the quantities counted, etc. And I've got a log of exactly what transpired on that particular inventory count. Right, close that. And as you can see now, the status has now been set to completed, and the stock check has now been determined or completed. Let's just go check what has happened to those items where there were variances. Right, so I'm just going to go through to my inquiries, transaction history, and let's just go find one of the items. And if you view that, you'll see that there's the inventory count, there's a value, and in this particular instance, there was a deficit. So there's been adjustment out of 1 unit, which was a shortfall on our inventory count. If I then check the other one where there was a deficit or a surplus, and you'll see that I've got the ADJ transaction type, I've got a quantity of 2 in, which was my surplus, and I've got details of the reference. So as you can see, the individual stock item is going to be updated with the ADJ transaction, as well as a general ledger with details or updating the relevant GL accounts on that transaction type. Right. So just go check what has happened now if we intend to have a stock count where we have lot numbered items. So I'm going to go to my inventory count and create a new one. Right, all the details are then is going to give it a reference. Right, and I'm going to have that information. Inventory, I'm just going to filter by groups because it's a specific group where the lot numbered items exist. So I've got the information there. And under warehouses, I'm just going to only use a specific warehouse. Right, so I think I'm good to go, all in order. Right, there's my new count with my individual, my unique number. The count quantity, uncounted value, that's in progress. And now I'm going to go print the stock count sheet as per normal. Preview that. I've got my details, and I would then hand these to the person who's going to go count the stock, and they will then continue with the counting process. Right, so once again, we've got the ability to input. And in this particular instance, it's lot numbered items. So I've got the lot number there. And I can obviously go and set, add, or subtract the particular quantities that are counted. If I then go to edit quantities, you'll see that I've once again got the lot numbered column. And then I will then just go insert those quantities based on my stock count sheet. But now if you go to import, let's just go to the import column. And if we check there, you'll see that there's a couple of options we need to complete. So for example, you specify the import file where the information has been stored, details about set the count quantity, add, subtract, etc., and updated counted items, updated uncounted items. Now, in order for you to import, you can use 2 different file formats. Firstly, it's a character delimited, either being a comma delimited or a tab delimited, or a fixed length file. So depending on which one you want to use, specify the details there. Now, very importantly, in some instances, you may have large stock volumes to count. So you may use something like, for example, a handheld scanner, scan the quantities counted, and then have that information saved in for example, a TXT file with a particular specific format. Now, if you recall, perhaps if you importing items by the data distribution services, you need to form a mapping with regards to map the fields within your DDS, and then which may need to correspond to import file. A similar scenario exists here. And very importantly, there are 2 compulsory fields. That's the item code. So the item code must form part of your import file. And then also the count, which is the number that you've counted of that particular item. So item code and count are the 2 compulsory fields. And then a couple of other fields which you can add, for example, item category, lot number if it's a lot numbered item, serial number if it's serial numbered item, a URM code, and then obviously the warehouse code. So for my import, I'm going to use the lot number. And then with my down arrow key, I can go create a new line and I can specify the warehouse code. So my input file is going to consist of those 4 fields. And I'm now going to go open up my input file. And there we have it. So I'm just going to maximize this, and then there we go. And if we look here, right, you'll see that we've got the item code, that being the item code, the quantity counted, the lot number, and then the warehouse for those 3 items that form part of my count. Right, so there's my file, which I can then just close before import. And I'm now going to go browse for that file, pick it up from there, and there's the path, and I'm good to go. Right, so it's been counted. I'm now going to say OK for the import. Right, there are no errors, which is great. And at this point, I can go look at the message log viewer. It's under inventory count import. And if I expand that, you'll see that it gives me details of the items that were imported, the lot numbers, etc. So I've got those details there for references. Close that. And if I go to my edit quantities, you'll see it's brought in those details as per my count. So in this particular instance, no variances, all in order, and the import has now brought in those details, and I can continue. Close that. I'm then going to go and capture this particular stock count, close it, no more changes can be made, and I can then go print the variance, preview, and we've got system quantity, count quantity, no variance in this case, which is a good thing. And I can close that. And let's just go back to complete. Right, I've printed my variance report, so I can continue, specify to post on today's date, and I'm good to go. Update. Right, and then the log file if I need to, and I've got my details. Status is being set to completed, and I'm good to go. Right, so that takes care of lot numbered items importing. Now, a similar scenario may occur if you're using serialized items. However, the import file is going to look slightly different. So I'm now going to go open up a new stock count, and I'm going to say it's for serialized items. Right, so I've got the details there, and I'm going to specify a filter selection option there. There we go. Inventory, and I'm going to once again use my groups option. Right, so there we go. It's all in order. Yes, that looks like it's all in order, and okay. Right, so there I've got my details, and there's my count. I'll go print those stock count sheets. Right, and I'm good to go. Right, now let's just go check at the input screen. So if I go to my input, similar to the other screen, but at the bottom you notice that there's an item count where I need to go specify a serialized number. And the serial numbers obviously is a one-to-one relationship. Those numbers need to be unique. Whereas with lot number tracking, it's one lot number and you can have multiple units linked to one particular lot. So yeah, I need to specify the item code, which I have, the serial number, and I can then specify which numbers form part of that count. No problem there. If I then go to edit quantities, you'll see that once again, I've got all the items there. And I've also got a serial number column. And if I go in there, I need to specify which of the serialized numbers or the serial numbers that I counted during my count and specify that these are the ones that I have counted. Right, so I've got the details there and I've marked that as counted. Let's just take that, just confirm that. Right, we're good to go. Right, so if we're now going to using an import to do those details, let's just go import. And once again, we've got those details there. And I'm just going to go map it according to my import file. So I'm going to use serial number this time. And I've got the warehouse code. So item code being first and count, those are the two compulsory fields. I've then got serial number, warehouse code, and let's just go check what our import file needs to look like. So import file, there we go. So in this particular instance, I've got my item code. I've got the number of units, which is always going to be 1 for a serial number, because it's a one-to-one relationship. And then I've got the actual physical serial number and the warehouse. So let's just confirm those details, make sure everything's in order. Right, so there we go. We've got item code being first, the count being 1 unit, the serial number, which is unique, and then the warehouse code. Right, all looks to be in order. And let's just continue. So I'm going to go browse and find the correct file to import. Right, there we go. And okay, let's just say okay to that. There we go. No errors, which is great. We'll go check out the log file. And let's just go check the log file there. Expand that. And there we go. It gives me details of the imported items, the serial numbers, etc. And I've got all the information there if I need to refer to it. Right. So you've completed that. I'm just going to make that as being captured. No more changes can then be made. Status has been updated. And I'm then going to go print that variance report. And now the interesting thing here is that you'll notice is that it's going to give me details of the serialized numbers. So as you can see, this is what the system said I had on hand as a serial number, the counted quantity, serial numbers, and there were no variances. So an easy way to just determine exactly the serial numbers which you counted versus those which the system says you have on hand, and obviously check any variances if applicable. Okay, so I think that's sorted, and then I'm just going to go to complete. And we can then go update this particular count. Right, no errors, and the stock check has been completed. Right, so as you can see, quite a few options that you can make use of to import input quantities from a stock count. If you are going to be using importing, ensure that you've mapped your import file together with your stock count so those fields do correspond and the import does go through successfully. So you may be familiar with a feature in Evolution called Job Manager, which allows you to sort of schedule certain things like the running of reports, etc. Now, we also have a feature in Evolution which allows you to go schedule a stock take. And let's just go see exactly how that works. So I'm going to go to Add, and I'm going to go create a new count. And I'm just going to mark this as being a scheduled count, which is going to take a point where it can take place at some particular point, and I can specify a due date for when the scheduled count needs to be carried out and completed. Right, so I'm once again going to specify a range here, and let's just go find Okay, so I've got my range here, which is going to be scheduled. And what you'll notice is that under recurring options, because there's a scheduled count, I've got the feature there where I can determine the frequency of this count. So I can specify last day of the month, every month, every week, etc. Or I can specify on the specific day of the week, etc. So, and also specify the number of occurrences that schedules need to take place. So I can specify last day of every month, and I'm good to go. I've got the details there, and I'm sorted. Marked as scheduled. And what you notice straight away is that the status is now set to count due. So remember, the four statuses are in progress, completed, captured, and count due. Because it's been marked as a scheduled count, it updates the status to be count due. Right, so there we go. Now what you notice is that on this count, the input, import, and the quantities features are not available as yet. And there's a specific reason for that. Now, under my desktop on the system tree, we have different notifications. And under my desktop, there's an option that says scheduled inventory counts due. So if I open up that, it's going to tell me that there is a count due. So I'm fully aware of it. And I can obviously make or schedule the account or complete the account when required, but at least I've got a notification under my desktop. So once again here, you'll also notice is that the count and uncounted option columns are not available, simply because the system at this particular point doesn't know what the count quantities are going to be, because it's scheduled, it's a scheduled inventory count. So in order to continue now, I'm going to have to use the option called snapshot. Now, at this particular point, I'm ready to do my counts. I'm going to say snapshot. And now it tells me that the count is now due. And I can then go and update it. So at this particular time, the system has checked which items are on the count and what the system quantities are at this particular point. And if I say OK there, you'll see that the input, edit quantities, and import now are available. And I can continue with my count. So I can either complete the count or carry on from here, or I can revert back to inventory transactions, inventory count. Right, so once again, it's gone from count due to in progress. I'm then simply going to go and print those stock take sheets. Right, insert, have the physical stock items being counted. And then I can just edit the quantities. And save and close. And I'm good to go. I can then print that variance report. Right, so there's my details, no variances, all in order. And close that. I'm going to mark this count as being captured so that no changes can be made. There we go. And let's just go to complete. I've got the variance report, no problem. And then I can simply go and complete that count. Yes. Right, and I'm good to go. So as you can see, it really is a very simple process in order for you to complete an inventory count. A large variety of options that you can make use of to input those quantities, and very easy to import if you are going to be using things like lot numbered items and serialized numbered items. And then also, very importantly, details about being captured, which means that you've captured the stock count, no adjustments or changes can be made. And then very importantly, to print the variance report before completing the count, so that you've got details of exactly which items are going to be adjusted and the costs of those variances. And then also a very useful feature, we can schedule a stock take so that you can run a stock count of a certain intervals and then ensure that you've got those details there. Just ensure that you obviously make use of the snapshot feature if you're using the scheduled count. So really very important to understand the importance of maintaining strict basics with regards to your stock management to ensure that you're fully aware of your physical quantities of stock do correspond to the system quantities, and that you can obviously maintain a strict account of the stock quantities within your organization. I do hope this webinar was useful. Thank you for tuning in. It's over and out from me, and goodbye.